folks, welcome to the channel, Trickle Down Philosophy. I'm Don. I do reactions as well as just create my own videos and such on so many different topics, but they relate to life. Could be theological, could be atheistic, could be cosmological, and the wonder of the universe, what James Webb Space Telescope is finding and discovering, and so on. And in this one, it's Bill Nye Answers Questions from Twitter. I think it's from a couple of years ago. I guess he's known as the science guy. I had seen him out there. I wasn't real familiar with his work. I did one video so far where he was on Tucker Carlson a few years back, and they were going back and forth on climate change. And I thought Bill Nye did a fairly poor job in that interview, if you will, because Tucker was just asking questions, legit science questions, like, without mankind's involvement in fossil fuels and such, what would the average temperature of the Earth be? When do you think the next projected either ice age or whatever cataclysmic event would happen? And Nye was just deflecting those. But he kind of strikes me as like the Ralph Nader of scientific proselytizing. Twitter.
Greetings, Bill Nye here. Today we're going to do some science support. Our first question comes from Destiny Dolan. No, serious question. What makes people think global warming isn't a real thing? Like, it's February and it's 70 degrees outside, upside down smiley emoji. So I'm thinking now that it's cognitive dissonance. This is a real effect where people have a certain worldview. They're confronted with evidence which conflicts with the worldview. So they have dissonance, conflict in their minds. What's generally done, instead of changing your worldview, which you may have held your entire life, you dismiss the evidence, and along with that, you dismiss the authorities that may have provided the evidence.
Well, I will say dismissing authorities, I mean, you don't want to dismiss, you want to take it into consideration, but an appeal to authority is a logical fallacy. But on the other hand, it's foolish to disregard what a lot of people might be finding. If average temperatures are going up around the globe, then it may be worth taking account of that. And you may differ on the extent that fossil fuels are playing a part in that, and mankind is playing a part in that. But once things get politicized, which it absolutely did get politicized, then you have people not willing to hear it. Because if you're a Republican and a Democrat is pushing forth some idea, you're going to reject it because it's a Democrat. If you're a Democrat and a Republican is putting forth an idea like Trump derangement syndrome and all this or whatever, then you just immediately discount that. And it's like, well, that's part of the problem. Information is neutral. It doesn't matter who it comes from. It's either quote unquote right or wrong, or it's reliable or unreliable. But once it gets bifurcated into a two-party system, then it's really going to have an uphill battle. That's why climate change was not received as well as people might want it to be, because it was put out there that mankind is causing it exclusively. Man is the cause of it, rather than a possible contributing factor to it. That's where this went off the rails.
Bird TV asks if we can clone extinct species, should we? I think it'd be cool. What we're all talking about is
woolly
like a woolly mammoth. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Bill.
It's my woolly mammoth impression.
Ben Mesrich had a great book on the woolly mammoth, and they actually do have DNA from a woolly mammoth. And as I understand it, even though you're not allowed to clone things in the United States, there are other countries where the research is being funded by American companies or the U.S. government, and it's just being done in countries where it's just, it's a workaround. And as I understand it in the book, the woolly mammoth, the DNA, the embryo was going to be implanted, as I understand it, however this was going to work, or the DNA was going to fertilize an egg in an elephant. And I don't know what came of this, but that was a great book. Ben Mesrich's book. I think it was just titled Woolly. I'm kind of in agreement with him. It'd be pretty cool to resurrect these things to see what would happen. I think it would be less dangerous than what's going on with AI right now and robots.
This one would be named Steve. Anyway, I think it would be cool, but it's not up to me. Carry on. Do you know how long Earth has existed? This is from Isa Nissan. And I would say, 4.6 billion years. Rocky Online. I have a doubt related to evolution theory. If we evolved from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys? That's brilliant. You're the first guy to ever wonder this. We did not descend from monkeys. Monkeys and we have a common ancestor. So you may have seen this picture, this famous arrangement. This isn't really accurate. It wasn't just one to the other to the other. As we say, the family tree of hominids, like you and me, and even my old boss, is not just a straight line of one organism leading to another. It's a bush, as we say. So there's many, many branches, and you and I ended up on one of them. And so we did not descend from monkeys. Monkeys and us have a common ancestor, and you can prove it. Anthony Arjun asks, what makes a planet a planet? You got to have enough gravity to be a ball, and right now you got to have enough influence to clear out your orbit from other stuff, other debris.
So then, well, I wish he had addressed Pluto, because Pluto got demoted. And now it's, I don't think it's considered a comet. It's certainly not an asteroid. I'm almost positive, but it's considered space debris now. So we have 8 planets surrounding the sun, as we humans designate planets.
Stand with Rand writes, can alternative energy effectively replace fossil fuels? Absolutely yes. Burning coal is the worst thing we can be doing. So I encourage you to check out the solutionsproject.org. They have done an analysis of not only the United States' electricity needs, but 130 other countries around the world. And we could power the whole place right now if we just decided to do it with wind, solar energy, some tidal energy, some geothermal energy. We could run the whole place. Wouldn't shut down existing nuclear plants, but it's really hard to build a new nuclear plant because nobody wants them around. Running 2 asks, a double rainbow I saw a couple months ago. What causes double rainbow opposed to a normal rainbow? Well, one could make an argument. He's got pictures here, or she. In a sense, there's always a double rainbow. It's just the second one is much fainter. It's not as bright. So the background the sky has to be dark enough for you to see it, generally.
My screensaver is of a double rainbow that I took. I do yoga outdoors every other day I do my yoga practice outdoors by a pond in my neighborhood, even right through the winter. The coldest I did it this year, it was 14 degrees out. I get bundled up, but I still did it outside. Sometimes there's ice, snow all around, and the pond that's right there. I took this picture off the pond. There's a very clear rainbow, and then there's the ground, and then the reflection in the pond. It sort of continues this arc, and then you can see the faint one coming down into it, and that isn't reflecting off the water as well as you could see it in the sky. But that's my screensaver. Maybe I'll grab it and post it.
Backseat drawing. Magnets, how do they work? They're magic. No. What happens in certain materials, the strongest one and the most common one, the one we all know and love, is iron. And these are steel, and steel is almost entirely iron, just a little bit of carbon. There's what they call a virtual current, where the electrons are moving from atom to atom. And this produces this magnetic field. And this tendency is so strong that magnets stay magnetic for centuries. Mint Chocolate Chip asks, what is the 4th dimension? Is it smell?
Time.
The 4th dimension is time. This is not rocket surgery. 4th dimension is time. X, Y, Z, time. Lil Poundcake asks, can artificial intelligence take over the Earth? Yes. Yes. What do you think? No, people make artificial intelligence. Are we going to make a machine that produces electricity in a way that we can't control, that takes over for us? Really? Who's going to build that machine?
That is idiotic. Who's going to develop a nuclear bomb? Well, Oppenheimer and others said, you know what? We think that when we develop the ability to mutually destroy ourselves, it will generate peace because nobody would want to do it. Well, we're living with that threat right now. There are absolutely people who would say, you know what? Let's see what happens. And the notion with artificial intelligence, it's no different than the Third Reich in Germany, where each individual person, and they've done sociological and psychological inquiry studies and such on many people who were involved in Germany with the Third Reich and the SS and so forth. And there were some people like Mengele and so forth who were just evil. They liked inflicting pain on others. But like the bulk of them, or I should say they were going about their lives somewhat normally, if you will. They just said, like, I'm just playing my part in this factory, putting these things together. Or I'm just playing my part taking stenography or from whomever the leader is. And I figured that this would all come to an end soon, or what have you. But none of them really thought they were contributing themselves to something that was especially evil. They were just doing their job. And so most people think of the people shooting the guns at Jews and others, and there were Christians who were killed there as well, and sympathizers against the Third Reich. But people just thought, I'm just doing my job. They didn't think they were doing anything in their world, just, typing away or doing whatever secretarial work they might be for whatever military officers or whomever might be doing it. They didn't think they were doing anything especially evil because they didn't see the blood and guts and all that. So this was a study on how a collective could do atrocious things when most of the constituents within it were not especially evil doers, like, the folks that we know of who were tried and convicted or killed by the Americans or the Brits or the French or the Russians or whomever. So when it comes down to artificial intelligence and this broad community around the world, it isn't this super connected community where they're all talking with one another and saying, hey, are you making something that in and of its own self is really dangerous? That one would say no. And this one would say, no, I'm not doing, my part can't take over the world. No, my part can't take over humanity. No, mine can't. So ask each one that question. But collectively, when it's brought together, it absolutely can. Machine learning occurs at such an accelerated rate that unless there is some kind of mechanism placed within each one of, whether it's a robot or whatever machinery is developed to host the brain, the work of the artificial intelligence, and the rapidity with which it could process information, and the tools with which it might be equipped to do immediate destruction, like in Fahrenheit 451, if you read that book, where books were illegal. And there were these sort of robotic things that could, go around the land and just sniff out people who were wrongdoers, those who had books. Fahrenheit 451 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature, is the auto ignition temperature of paper. So at 451 degrees in an oven, it will burst into flames. It doesn't need a match to be put to it at that temperature. And that's the nature of the book. Books were illegal. So the idea that we would absolutely not create something that would do damage to us is ridiculous. He's the one who speaks against coal burning. We developed coal burning. We developed things that would burn coal. And so that industry in his world is chock full of evildoers, people who are doing harm to mankind, none of whom individually thinks necessarily they're doing harm. Some probably do, but others are like, look, I'm just providing for my family. So I absolutely take exception to the idea that mankind is so virtuous that we would never come up with something that could guarantee our mutual destruction. We've already got those things in the form of bombs and, in his world, fossil fuels.
Jared Jepperson, people say that cell phones, I think it might give off radiation to the brain. Turns out people get brain tumors all the time. People talk on cell phone way, way more of the time. They have done studies trying to connect cell phones and brain tumors. There is no connection. Carry on. Farah Damji, how safe is acupuncture? I know people believe in acupuncture. There's no value to it. But if you think it works and it makes you feel better, carry on.
Anybody that I know, even people who were so opposed to it but for some reason they went and got their elbow worked on or whatever. Anybody that I know that has had acupuncture done on them, they've all said, I feel a lot better after I have that done. A friend of mine, she goes, I think, every week now. And man, she was opposed to it for decades. And then I don't know what caused her to go get something worked on. I guess a friend of hers who might have even been a doctor, her own doctor might have said, look, consider this for your elbow or whatever part of her body was hurting. And he says it does nothing. I don't know. Based on the testimony of people who get it done, it does something.
Will horseradish and rib au jus leak through you after you get acupuncture? I don't know. Run a test. Try it. Brianna, Ray, they say avocados are good fat, but how much avocado can you eat before it becomes bad fat? You can eat 1 million avocados. What do you think? For crying out loud, there's calories in avocados. Just there's also some unsaturated fat. Avocados are great. I recommend an avocado with a poached egg. That's living. Vates, I wonder what the world would be like after a nuclear war. It would suck, okay? I was in class when Professor Carl Sagan talked about this idea of nuclear winter, where you'd set off so many nuclear weapons so rapidly that all the debris thrown in the sky would make the Earth cold. And this was dismissed for a while until Walter and Luis Alvarez found an impact crater off Chicxulub, Mexico, that was almost certainly where this asteroid hit that killed the ancient dinosaurs in the same way, by throwing this cloud of debris. The ejected material from that impact was bigger around than the diameter of the Earth.
Yeah, that was like Mount St. Helens when it erupted. There was so much stuff ejected into the upper atmosphere, and Mount St. Helens is in Washington State. And the jet stream, it got carried. And even people like in South Dakota, it was dark at like noon. The ash came over. But throughout Washington, there were 3-4 inches of ash hundreds of miles away from Mount St. Helens itself. And that was a cubic mile of dirt that was blown into a cubic mile. I've been to Mount St. Helens too. I went there 10 years after. It was beyond belief what was still there, just how trees were mowed down like you would comb your hair. Trees miles from it, the impact of it. But that volcano threw so much stuff up that it did darken the sky for a couple of days as far east as South Dakota. Now, I don't know about Illinois, Michigan, and we didn't really see it here in New Jersey, but certainly a cataclysmic event like a nuclear war, who knows how much stuff that would throw into the upper atmosphere and then cloud us over.
Dr. Chad Zahid, so what's concluded about GMOs? Are they safe to eat or not? Yes, GMOs are safe to eat. We feed genetically modified food to rats, lab rat, mice, all the time.
It's not a good argument.
The problem is that what genetically modified organisms have enabled monocultures, these enormous fields of the same type of plant. And that has led to some environmental problems.
Wow.
Callie, how do people actually believe the Earth is flat? I'm stumped, Callie. I don't know how people believe that.
Yeah.
We have classroom globes. We have spacecraft that take pictures. You can find documents from medieval times where people knew the world was round. Christopher Columbus knew the world was round. He just sold Queen Isabel on the idea that he could get it done really fast, sailing around the world. Derek, why are people willing to pay more for organic food when there's absolutely no evidence that it's any better for you? Perception. It's marketing, man. People want to feel that no pesticides were used, and they're thinking maybe globally. It's not just a question of whether or not it's good for you. It's a question of whether or not it's good for the ecosystem and good for the agriculture, the sustainability of our agricultural systems. One of these is organic, and one of them is genetically modified. Do you know which one? Neither do I, but generally the bigger one. No, you can't tell. Carry on. Final question. Hey, Bill, are you free for dinner? Often. Often. Thanks for your question. Carry on.
All right, so fair enough. I don't know the depth of his scientific background. He has some knowledge, clearly. Some of his arguments are, self-defeating. But, if something's part of an ecosystem, then he did mention with the GMOs that part of the problem with the GMOs is that they create a monoculture, which is not necessarily good for the environment. But we are also part of the environment. So even if ingesting it doesn't affect us directly, what is the effect on the ecosystem in which we live? I mean, he would readily understand that part. He might argue against it, but he's an interesting character. It's kind of fun seeing these things. And just seeing, his answers and going back and forth as far as what arguments make sense, not just of his, but of anybody's. So which ones make sense, which ones don't, which ones seem to have a good basis to what the thought is, and so on. Anyway, he's entertaining. I'll give him that. The bow tie sort of I think Carl Sagan was he Harvard or Yale? And so if he was in class, taking class from him, he would have been an Ivy League dude, and his outfit certainly agrees with that. He'd be able to get into the Harvard or the Yale club without issue with this on. So, all right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. It's fun looking at these things. Stay curious, keep thinking, and keep thinking philosophically.